As quickly as they came, they left. Stories of Vikings in North America tell of mysterious lands and foreign tribes known only as Skrælings. It was 1000 AD. For nearly 12,000 years, the Americas had been cut off from Eurasia. Civilizations developed on each side without knowledge that the other existed. Nearly 500 years before Columbus sailed the ocean blue, the Vikings journeyed to the Americas from Greenland and Iceland, possibly multiple times. And it wasn't very peaceful. Welcome back to Nutty History. Today, we're examining the Viking fingerprints in North America, their clashes with the Native Americans, and why they disappeared almost as soon as they arrived. Viewer discretion is advised for this video, as some of this video may be offensive or disturbing. We, the makers of this video, in no way support or condone the actions of the subjects featured. By around 980, Erik the Red had begun a movement to colonize Greenland, and it wasn't exactly by choice. Erik was a wild man and had been banished from Iceland for 3 years because he'd eliminated someone. He then named the pretty cold and inhospitable piece of land he found while exploring Greenland to entice people to move there. It worked. A few thousand Vikings ended up settling down and calling Greenland home. Erik then heard of strange lands to the west from a merchant sailor who had been blown off course on his way from Iceland to Greenland. Erik's son, Leif Erikson, was fascinated by the story. So, sometime around 1000 AD, Leif set sail with 35 men to find out if this mysterious land existed. Apparently it did. Leif and his men set up camp somewhere in what's thought to be Newfoundland. There, his foster father, Tyker, was said to have gotten pretty tipsy on wine berries. It's thought that Tyker's drunkenness could have come about from eating fermented cranberries, gooseberries, or squash berries, all of which grew wild in the region. Leif and his crew didn't stay very long, though. They eventually left and headed back to Greenland. There are no accounts of encounters with Native Americans during Leif's brief visit to the New World. The Viking Greenlanders had probably met some Native Americans in Greenland. However, there's evidence that they traded with the Thule, ancestors of the Inuit. Ivory carvings of Norsemen have been found at Thule archaeological sites, as well as iron and bronze tools that the Thule weren't capable of making themselves. It's thought that the Viking name for Native Americans, Skrælings, probably originated from the Old Norse word skra, which means dried skin, most likely a reference to the animal pelts worn by the Inuit ancestors. In any event, Leif's brother Thorvald ended up making a second voyage west a few years later. Thorvald and his men set up shop for the winter at the camp Leif left behind. In the spring, the Vikings came across 9 natives sleeping under skin-covered canoes and attacked them, eliminating all but one. The one who survived ran to get reinforcements. A battle ensued, and Thorvald lost his life to an arrow. Despite tense relations with the Native Americans, the Vikings ended up staying another winter before heading back to Greenland. A few more years would pass before another Norseman made the journey to the New World. This time, it was Thorfinn Karlsefni. Thorfinn was a wealthy merchant with a distinguished lineage. He organized a far larger expedition than either of the Erikson brothers had. With 3 ships, between 160 to 250 men and women and livestock, Thorfinn's expedition ventured farther south than either Leif or Thorvald's. They ended up settling in a place called Stromfjord. There, they encountered more Skrælings. It started off peacefully enough. The two groups bartered with each other, with the Native Americans trading furs for red cloth and a wondrous liquid called milk that came from the cattle the Vikings had brought over. But then things took a turn. The Viking colonists lived on a knife's edge with the native peoples, and there were increasing instances of hostility and outright fighting. It all came to a head when, according to one account, a bull from the Viking camp got loose and frightened a group of Native Americans. They fled, but came back in greater numbers, ready to fight. They attacked the Vikings with catapults, and a legendary battle ensued. It could have been the last straw for Thorfinn and his prospective colony. They abandoned the site and returned to Greenland. No European would attempt to settle in the New World for hundreds of years. Unfortunately, there isn't much evidence or archaeological finds able to back up the presence of Vikings in the Americas. There are a few, however, such as Lance Aux Meadows in Newfoundland, which might be one of the most intriguing archaeological sites in the world. Back in the 1960s, a Norwegian couple, Helge Ingstad and Stein Ingstad, began scouring the northeastern Canadian coast, hoping to find archaeological evidence for the places mentioned in the sagas. On the northern tip of Newfoundland, they found it. Meadows has become the only confirmed Viking settlement in North America. The site includes the remains of 8 sod houses, evidence of ironwork that couldn't have been done by Native Americans, and a boat-building frame. Experts think the site could have possibly been a ship repair center, partly because of the physical evidence for boat building, and partly because the settlement sits at a perfect spot for hopping across the North Atlantic to Greenland. A final piece of evidence confirming that Meadows is indeed a Viking settlement is a small but significant little pin. The bronze pin with a ring at the end was likely used to attach a cloak around the neck, and it is most definitely Viking. There have been others just like it found at various Viking archaeological sites in Scotland and Ireland, and they've all been dated to between 920 and 1050 AD. One of the only other pieces of hard evidence for Viking presence in the Americas was found farther south on a beach in Brooklyn, Maine. One day in August of 1957, an amateur archaeologist named Guy Melgren discovered a curious old coin. At first, he suspected it was a medieval British penny. But then in 1978, experts identified it as a Norse coin that was minted between 1065 and 1093. The site where the coin was found, called the Goddard site, includes a huge number of arrowheads, leading some to speculate that the arrival of the coin coincided with the arrival of archery among the Native Americans in the region. Were they taught by ancient Viking visitors? The Goddard coin was met by a significant amount of skepticism by historians and archaeologists. There have been some fakes in the past regarding the Viking discovery of America, including a hoax map and a fabricated runestone with Norse inscriptions found in Minnesota. However, the Norse coin has been held up to scrutiny by experts who agree that it is original and that it had all the wear and tear of a coin buried for centuries. We don't know a lot about the Vikings settling in the Americas for periods of time, but we do know of 3 expeditions to the New World because of 2 sagas, the saga of Eric the Red and the saga of the Greenlanders. Together, they're known as the Vinland sagas. Both were written down a couple of hundred years after the events that they relate from around the year 1000. They differ in some respects, but tell the same basic stories about Viking settlements in North America. However, there's mystery surrounding where exactly they landed. The sagas mention 3 main places, Helioland, Markland, and Vinland. Helioland was the farthest north and means land of flat stones. In the middle, there was Markland, which means land of forest, and farthest south was Vinland, which means land of wine. There's lots of speculations about where exactly these places are based on how their landscapes are described in the sagas. Some think Helioland could be Baffin Island in the northern Canadian territory of Nunefjord. Markland has been hypothesized to be Labrador farther to the southeast, and Vinland is thought to be modern-day Newfoundland. Another mystery surrounds the location of Thorfinn's camp, Stromfjord. In the sagas, Stromfjord is described as having strong currents with high tides, a bay that acted as a natural harbor, craggy rocks in the distance, a winter where the sun rose by mid-morning instead of mid-afternoon, and so many birds nesting that it was hard not to step on eggs. Various places along the northern coast of North America have been proposed for the location of Stromfjord based on these descriptions. From the Bay of Fundy and Meadows in Canada, to Buzzards Bay in Massachusetts, and even as far south as Long Island Sound in New York. A final piece of the Vikings and America mystery has to do with why they didn't stay. Why couldn't these fierce warriors survive in the Americas for more than a few years? Why didn't they set down roots? Why doesn't a significant portion of the population in North America today speak Norse? Lots of people have speculated about the reasons for this. Maybe they didn't bring enough people and supplies with them on their expeditions. Maybe they were driven out by hostile Native Americans. But one of the leading theories has to do with the weather. During the 11th century, Leif and Erikson and Thorfinn Karlsefni led their expeditions to the New World. The climate was warmer. It's known as the medieval warming period, and because of it, there were warmer summers and less Arctic sea ice. But then it got colder. Starting in the 12th century, what's become known as the Little Ice Age caused temperatures to drop and ice to accumulate. making many of the sea routes impassable. It also made life on Greenland and Iceland very difficult for the Vikings. Evidence points to food shortages and plague. Between 1250 and 1700, Iceland's population fell from 150,000 to just 50,000. The Viking stint in North America was brief. What we know about it has been reduced to legend, told through sagas that could be historical fact or mythological fiction or a combination of the two. The physical evidence includes just one small settlement, a pen and a coin. Yet it's fascinating to think what could have happened if they stayed. Let us know in the comments what you think. Did the Vikings ever step foot in the Americas? As always, thanks for watching Nutty History. Don't forget to like and subscribe for amazing content.